Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to our broadcast live on Facebook, YouTube and LinkedIn. So my name is Catherine Kennedy. I'm the New South Wales Director for People2People. Thank you very much for joining us for our regular employment market update. Ordinarily, our Group Managing Director would be your host today, but he is in Victoria with our Melbourne team for their strategy day today. So I'm in the driver's seat, but Mark will be joining us to share his regular numbers section shortly. Other things on the agenda for today. So we've got Ben Wheeler from our Queensland team will give us a bit of an update on what's happening in the Brisbane market. We have a job opportunity of the week from Marissa in our Parramatta team, and then our shared services manager, Lisa Johnson, will also be joining us to give us some insights around job applications. So thanks for joining us, everybody. As always, if there's any questions or comments as the broadcast goes on, I can see them live as they pop up. So really welcome your feedback and your input along the way. But let's firstly head down to Melbourne, where Mark Smith is with the Victorian team for our numbers section.
Kath.
Hello, this is a role reversal.
Yes, it is indeed. So I'm down here in Melbourne for the People2People Melbourne Strategy Day. You can probably hear them in the background. They're in the middle of one of their sessions, and I'm here at the Angliss Conference Centre, just in the CBD. It's fabulous grey weather though today here in Melbourne, but hopefully we're going to go out on a boat this afternoon. Hence why I'm wearing my light blue shirt, blue for boating. Is what I've decided.
For people watching, there's been a running joke going that every time that Mark books a flight to Melbourne, something happens and the border's closed. So you're there, which is good.
Yeah, I made it. Fantastic. All right, well, let's get into the numbers then for today. I've got, I thought I'd start with a slide on Victoria, just to give a little, because I'm down here in Victoria, that I'd give a few statistics on the Victoria. And I think, Remy, you've got that if you wanted to pop that up on the screen there. So what you can see here is basically where does Victoria fit into things here in terms of population growth. And Victoria has 6.6 million people as of June 2020, and that population increase from the previous year is 1.5%. So that was the highest gross increase in population in any state or territory in Australia. So it's certainly on the up, despite all the negative news about COVID, etc. Victoria is on its way, and it's the second highest state or territory with a percentage growth rate. I think, and you can probably see at the bottom of the slide there, that there is anticipation that Victoria and Melbourne specifically will become Australia's largest city by 2026. I think a couple of years ago that was 2030. So watch out, Sydney. Definitely Victoria is on its way. So I thought I'd share that with you today. The other one I wanted to share with you, which I thought was interesting, was the unemployment numbers that were released in the US last week. So you can see those numbers up on the screen there, because you can see that obviously the impact of COVID on unemployment, but there has been a steep decline in unemployment in the US. There are some states that are experiencing a little bit of an uptick in unemployment in the US because of the resurgence of COVID, but generally the recovery has been really stronger than anticipated in the US, and so I thought it was nice to get the comparison, because we did a little bit of analysis on unemployment in Australia a couple of weeks ago, and we definitely did not reach the highs the US did, but they are recovering quickly, and our unemployment is obviously quite strong as well. The last thing I thought I'd show you today is a graph on there's been a lot of positive news about growth, and last week we had the growth numbers in Australia, and this is from Greg Jericho, and Remy, if you wanted to pop that up on the screen here. So Greg Jericho is a journalist and economist at The Guardian, and I would recommend that you follow him on Twitter, and I think this was also retweeted by Alan Kohler as well. Look, this is probably the most negative of the slides that I've showed in quite some time, because it's all been good news. This is the adjusted annual nominal GDP growth in Australia, and essentially what that is the addition of GDP, which came out last week, and it was a fabulous 3.2%, 3.1%, something along those lines. And those two quarters together, we haven't seen that for a very decades, the 2 quarters growth that we've just experienced. But the adjusted and nominal growth is where you add in the inflation expectations. So the RBA has obviously inflation expectations of 2 to 3%. So you'll see that Greg there has got that pink area, which is the sweet spot for this. And you'll see that that sweet spot there, we are a long way away when you add the growth and the nominal GDP. Just noticed there we've got some comments coming through there and on the comments. So if you do have any comments, then we'll get to those during the broadcast as well. So please feel free to comment and we'll come back to you. But that's it from me, live from Melbourne. I've got to go back and join the team and talk about our strategy for the 2021, and I'm really quite confident. I can see that Shanaz there says that she's got some problems in getting in touch with us, etc., and how the job market is. Well, Shanaz, the job market is improving, I can guarantee you, and it is looking particularly good here in Victoria, if that's where you're based. But back to you, Kath.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. So we might go now we've got a video actually, because she wasn't able to join us live, but Marissa Verudo from our Western Sydney team's got a couple of opportunities that she's urgently recruiting at the moment. So Remy, if you could, we might just get that video from Marissa, and then we'll go and have a chat to Ben up in Queensland, if you've got that there.
Hi, it's Marissa from P2P in Parramatta. I've been engaged to recruit for customer service representatives in the Hills District for a well-known retailer in a friendly and hardworking customer service team. These positions are permanent full-time, and I'm looking for candidates who have worked in a similar call centre environment and have experience in high-volume call taking and first call resolution. This opportunity is for days Tuesday through to Saturday and hours of 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. So if you are interested in this position, please press apply now, or please get in touch with me on the details below. Thanks.
Great. So yes, if you're interested in that particular opportunity, Marissa's details were there. We'll make sure that that video and the link to the advertisement is shared in the comments as well, so that you can connect with her. But what we'll do now is we'll head north and have a chat to Ben Wheeler, who's our director in Brisbane, and get a bit of an insight around what's happening specifically in the Queensland market. So we might jump up and say hello to Ben if he's there. Oh, I can't hear you, Ben. Oh no, now I can. I think. Sorry.
Am I back? Am I good?
Technical issues.
Great.
There we go. Hello.
I was just saying, interesting with some commentary, which is going to be sort of reflecting what Mark just mentioned around Victoria and challenging, I think, Sydney on the increase in capital city. But we've certainly might not be doing that in Queensland, but there's a big increase in interstate migration, which I'll talk about. So overall, starting off, the Queensland market is very positive at the moment on a year-on-year basis and on a month-on-month basis. We've seen an increase in the number of vacancies listed with people-to-people in Queensland. Also, if you look at the data from the Internet Vacancy Index, and that's an index that's run by the government and essentially monitors the major job boards and the number of roles that advertise. Across Australia, we've now got over 9 months of month-on-month increases. And as of the low point of April, that's coming from. And if you look at the increases more recently, Queensland is up 17%. In comparison, Victoria is up 7.5%, and New South Wales is up 2.1%. Wow. Interestingly, that trend is most apparent as the number of vacancies have increased, but the number of available candidates hasn't increased at the same rate. So what we're experiencing is a candidate short market. And why is this happening? First of all, international migration is, of course, almost non-existent. And secondly, there's still candidate hesitancy. So typically we would see an influx of candidates in the new year in January. That simply didn't happen. I think that's mainly because, and I suspect that's across all our offices, but there is a difference, I think, between that business sentiment increasing and people looking to hire and candidates probably still feeling a little bit nervous about what's happening. For us in Brisbane, I think that lockdown probably didn't help that. But also I think it's it's certainly still an environment where candidates that are employed are still a little bit hesitant to make the move. One of the other things that we're seeing is that those who've been employed throughout the pandemic have had a change in work conditions, and there's certainly a disconnect at the moment between the employer, the person with a vacancy looking to hire, around the work from home options. And I'm not talking about flexibility. So a lot of people talk about flexibility. It's pretty much a given that every employer will essentially have that. What I mean by the work from home options is that someone can have a regular day working from home, because if you've got it at the moment and you've probably experienced a lot of the positives that might go with that, you'd be quite reluctant to give it up. And we're finding that certainly some employers are saying things like, we'll consider it after 6 months once we can trust you. And if you're someone that has got a role and you're not that sort of desperate to get out of it, then you're most likely to say, well, I'm not going to move then. So it's going to be interesting how that sort of plays out. I think it will become a supply and demand, but at the moment, broadly speaking, it's a candidate short market. So I think the clients will be under pressure to look at.
I don't know if this is your experience in Queensland, but certainly we're seeing that there is a little bit of a disconnect between the understanding or the expectations of a client needing to make a really compelling case for someone to join them. There's sort of still a perception that there should be a reasonable glut of good quality candidates versus what the candidates are looking for. So that work from home option is just another one of those attraction strategies. And we're seeing certainly in Sydney that candidates are, the word I would use is sticky, which is probably a bit of a industry term, but they really, hard. They want to stay in their jobs unless there's a very, very compelling reason for them to leave. Whereas in more buoyant times or when they're pre-pandemic, I think there probably would have been a little bit more optimism to take a risk and try something new. Has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you can underestimate that over the pandemic period, that I think two things either happened. You've got resentment if you didn't treat your staff right, and of course those people are going to be looking for a role, or you get loyalty if you did the right thing. I think for the most part, employers did the right thing, and of course people experienced a change in their working conditions. So some people say change, go to holiday. I think that meant that people are probably less likely also to make a move, and that could be around the reason why we're not seeing as many candidates come to the market just yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for those insights. Anything else that you wanted to add? Otherwise, it'd be good to get an idea of how.
Also, I'd mentioned, just coming back to the interstate migration. So what's positive for Queensland is that it's currently at a 20-year high. So we're having quite an increase, and this is reflected in our house prices, and certainly anyone that's looking for a rental up in Brisbane at the moment will notice that it's highly competitive. So I haven't quite seen a huge increase just yet, but I think all the numbers are suggesting, all the activity is suggesting that it is going to happen. And we have noticed it in the applications from people moving from interstate. And just with the market, and I said candidate short, that's not in every area, but the most competitive we're seeing is in clerical accounting, human resources, and the legal support sector is very candidate short. So as you said, employers are having to come up with some compelling reasons to attract good quality candidates.
Excellent. Thank you for your insights. If people wanted to get in touch with you or the Brisbane team, what's the best way for them to do that?
Best way is simply give me a call, 07 3118 0125, or feel free to send me an email, and I'll put a note in the comment section with the email address.
Great. I think that's already been added, actually, the phone number for the Brisbane team. So thank you for joining us, Ben. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks.
Thank you.
See ya. Great. So what we will do now is we will have a chat to, and last but certainly not least, is our Shared Services Manager, Lisa Johnson. So Lisa joins us live. Hello, Lisa.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
I'm very happy to be here today
On
our 7:30 report. I can be Laura Tingle and you can be Lee Sales.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. I'd very happily to be compared anything like Lee Sales. I'd be very pleased to have that. So what did you want to talk to us about today?
Well, I actually wanted to come and talk about job applications from a slightly different angle. And this was because I'd seen some commentary on social media from people who were quite despairing that they apply for jobs and they never hear anything. And they just feel like there's this blank space. They send off an application and nothing happens. So I wanted to just have a little chat about why that happens, like what actually is involved with the other side of once that application's received. And I wanted to start off by recognizing for job applicants that it's a hard process and that employers and recruiters need to be respectful of that people have put the time and energy into applying for jobs, and we need to remember to be respectful of that. I think it's worth people understanding how many applications come through. So we can hear some numbers bandied around in the media saying, for every unemployed people, there are 13 jobs and, blah, blah, blah. But it's actually much worse than that, because the figures that the Australian Bureau of Statistics use, for example, don't take into account the number of people who are already working and who apply for jobs. So the actual number of, when we look at the applications that come through for a job order, to be honest, most of those people are already working.
Yeah.
And then you've got unemployed people as well, but it becomes very competitive. And I remember last year, during the pandemic, there was a customer service role that we had advertised, and we had over 350 people apply for that one job.
Yeah.
And at the end, there's only one winner. And
Yeah.
so that meant 349 people didn't get the job. And I know that that's really hard for people, but it's just the way it's a bit like buying a lotto ticket. You're putting your name in the draw, but you are competing with up to 350 other people for that spot. And when it's really competitive like that, employers can, and this goes back to what Ben was saying, employers can not what we call flex the spec. They become really narrow-minded in terms of the skills and the experience and the type of person that they want to place into their business, and that makes it harder for recruiters, and it makes it harder for job applicants, because it means that they can really narrow down on quite nitty, tiny details in a resume to say, yes, I want to employ this person, or no, I don't want to employ this other person. And sometimes those are really little things. It can come down to, if you have a spelling mistake,
Yeah. Yeah.
then it's
I think,
like, yeah, I'm
yeah.
excluding your application.
Well, if there's 350 applications to get through, then of course it's at that initial, there's not an opportunity to speak to somebody and make your case. And I think as much as, employers and recruiters would like to be able to give everybody that opportunity, it's just not realistic when there's that sort of volume. So you're right, it's a decision is made what's on paper, and that can be something quite small that makes that difference.
Yeah, and look, sometimes we hear other complaints. We'll hear people say that I know I can do the job, but there's nothing in their resume that demonstrates it. So it's hard for us to sell that person to a client based on that resume, like excluding having a conversation with them, because the client will go, but I can't see that they've done this work. And that applies for people who are trying to sort of move up. So you're trying to apply for a job that you've never done before, but it also can apply to people who have too much experience and they want to
Yeah.
take a step back, because then the perception can be that this is a job that you're taking because you haven't got any other options, and it's really going to be a stepping stone for you to get back to where you were. Like it's not a long-term option. And my recommendation for people in that spot is, you really can't rely on your resume. You need to pick up the phone and call and talk to the employer or to the recruiter to explain why you're looking to do a role that's below your skill set, so that you can convince people that it's not just you applying for a job because you haven't got one, and
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
really what you want to do. Um, what else did I want to say? Oh, I want to talk about how there's a perception that recruiters have all the jobs, and how you get lots of complaints that the jobs are all handled by recruitment companies and they're appalling, and so forth and so forth. And I just wanted to let people know that only 15% of jobs in Australia are managed by recruitment companies. So that
Yeah.
means 85% of jobs are done directly by the employer through different means that they can do. And 60% of people work in small to medium sized businesses who often don't use recruiters. So you can't just limit yourself when you're looking for a job to the job ads that you're seeing recruiters advertise. You really need to broaden your search to ensure that you're capturing those opportunities that aren't being advertised by recruiters. I think it's fair to say that recruiters advertise more than what other business what
It doesn't
businesses
necessarily
do.
mean there's more jobs.
It doesn't actually translate through to jobs. So I think people need to broaden their search. And bizarrely, Google's a good place to start, because if you do a Google search, then you're likely to find jobs that are advertised directly on companies' job pages, like their own websites, as well as things that are on different job boards that you may not even have considered. And also the other one, depending on the role, and I do think this is depending on the role that you want to do, Facebook jobs is a really good place.
Somebody mentioned that to me the other day. Yeah, for a particular type of position, I think it's relevant to your.
And I do think that we're likely to see more smaller to medium-sized businesses advertising on Facebook, because it feels like quite a native common platform for them to do that. And so I would really encourage people to look at that as well. But in terms of what people can do to help themselves is make sure your resume's got no spelling mistakes. Make sure that there are keywords. And I know that people complain that it sounds like it's an automated process, but we really do look for skills and experience when we're evaluating resumes. So it needs to be there. And that can include types of systems that you've used or industries that you've worked in. Like you need to put that level of detail into it so that people can search for it. Then there's like I was saying, use Google, go and knock on doors, approach employers directly.
Well, that's probably timely. There's a question that's just come through here from Betty, and she's asked, do you recommend cold applications and cold calling? What's your view on that?
I think cold applications can work really well in person more than calling. I think that I know I've talked to loads of people who've knocked on businesses' doors and said, look, I'd like to drop in my resume. And just that few moments of that person-to-person contact is really positive. It also sends a genuine message that you're actually looking for a job.
Yes.
And that you're really committed to finding work. And I think that is a really powerful message to send to an employer who may just think I'm inundated with resumes and I don't know where to start. But look, here's a person in front of me. And I'll give you a real life example with my daughter when she was much younger, and she wanted to go work in a retail company that worked for a computer store, basically. And she went and handed in her resume. That's what she did. She walked in, said, who can I talk to about finding a job here? And the guy took her resume and she came home, and he called her the next day because he had a resignation that night.
Yeah.
And she got a job from that. So there is absolutely go and knock on doors. It's hard work, and I know, and it's just as dispiriting as everything else, but sometimes it will make a real difference and get you a foot in the door if you're struggling to find work.
Yeah, indeed. I think that even the follow-up call to the application as well, if you if you are one of many, and if I pick up the phone, if you pick up the phone to me and we have a conversation, one, you'll just be more memorable. One, it's going to get your application probably higher up the list in terms of the time that I'm able to get to it. So yeah, there's certainly nothing to be lost in doing that, Betty. So hopefully that is helpful for you. I think there is a blog that Remy will dig out, or there's a whole bunch of blogs on our website that would be relevant to this topic, but we'll try to share a couple of things that might be particularly relevant in the comments there. But thank you for your insights and contribution today, Lise.
No problems at all.
Cheers. Excellent. Well, we're nearly at the end of the broadcast. Just a couple of quick, fairly fun things to share before we wrap up. So every week we run a Twitter poll. So I've got the results from the Twitter poll from last week to start with. So Remy, I might get you just to bring that up on screen. So the question last week, and I find it hard to say this without giggling really, but it was, how often, if ever, do you wear leg wear while you're working from home? So I think this comes from the idea that people are sort of suited up the top or in very corporate attire on top, but not necessarily wearing similar corporate attire underneath. I think this question's open to a little bit of interpretation. And I'm hoping that people have interpreted it to mean that they're not wearing corporate clothes, but the results are that 50% of the responders, and there was over 500 votes, are always wearing leg wear, but astoundingly 17% said they rarely or never wear leg wear. So I don't know if that means that they're sitting there in their undies, or if they're just perhaps wearing board shorts or in their yoga pants or whatever, and I've certainly been guilty of that. A colleague, actually, it was Ben a moment ago, was sharing a story that he and some of the team were on a call with some clients, which is fairly common these days, to a virtual meeting, and the client got them all to stand up. So they were all very professionally presented on top, but they all had to stand up, and there was a mix of board shorts and workout wear and other non-professional attire going on underneath. So that's just a warning to people that you might be put on the spot to do that. Our Twitter poll for this week is about business cards. So I'll get you just to pop that next one up there, Remy. So I have been really happy to be going out and meeting with people face to face again. That's happening a lot more than it was over the last 12 months or so. I was at a meeting last Thursday, I think. I had my business card over, and the fellow who I met and he worked in quite a big corporate business. They just don't have them anymore. And there's a real sort of mix of practices around the place. So we wanted to know from the Twitterverse if business cards are relevant in 2021 or if they're still relevant. So really keen to get people's feedback on that, and we'll make sure that we share the results of that next week as well. So that's really it for today. Thank you so much for joining us again. As always, we've got all of the information has been shared in the comments there. If you've got any questions around any of the content that we've discussed or any of the roles that we've talked about, you can contact the relevant consultant. You can always go to our website as well and make contact with the relevant person. You'll be able to find that fairly easily in your state or location. I'd recommend that you subscribe to our blog. So there's really regular and good content that comes out on the blog, and also you can set up job alerts on our website if you are looking for work. You can do that so it just lands nice and easily in your inbox regularly, jobs that could be relevant for you. And please follow us on all of our social channels so that we can stay connected. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Mark will be back next week, and have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you.